I'm a guard at a secret government prison. Our most dangerous prisoner just escaped. Who's the worst, most despicable person you can think of? Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Jack the Ripper. Of course, you could make your arguments for any one of them or anybody else for that matter. Yet all of these people have one thing in common. They're human. Preposterous. People try to act like monsters, either due to lofty, ridiculous ideals or some primal urge to revolt against society as a whole. It's quite a bizarre phenomenon. Yet none of these admittedly sick people have truly fallen into the abyss. Perhaps they've stared down into it, dipped their feet in. But none of them have taken the plunge as a whole. Despite their efforts, they weren't able to separate themselves from their inherent humanity. But that's a good thing that they were relatively easy to take down. The bad news is that every once in a while, special cases will arise. In our circles, we call these individuals the void. People or just the voids. Individuals are so far gone that they can hardly be considered humans anymore. The cause behind entities like these, well, I wouldn't know. Nobody does. Maybe they were born with that latent potential. Maybe they underwent some obscure supernatural transformation. Maybe their experiments have gone awry. Aliens from another planet hoop. Maybe they're literal demons from hell brought here by some fool who just had to conduct some ducked-up ritual. Who the hell knows? The only detail that matters is the fact that they exist. And dealing with them is more than a jerk. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of max security. Prisons, places where substance kingpins, terrorists, and prolific serial unalivers, etc. are sent. The place is meant to contain the worst amongst humans. Well, those are a joke compared to where the voids are kept. At a pair of undisclosed coordinates built in the underground of a tiny island somewhere deep in the Atlantic, there exists a prison unlike anything you could imagine. We simply call it the Chasm, a penitentiary for pure, unbridled evil. A collective evil that would surely yield humanity's extinction in a couple of months, if it were allowed to run rampant in the world. Let me emphasize this a bit further. The individuals that require being held there are not merely criminally insane. They are criminally absolutely out of this universe. Effing bonkers. Of course, you wouldn't know about any of this. Why would you? The government would probably sacrifice 1,000 children before they'd divulge a single detail about the place to a person without high enough clearance. But you know that's just how they are. Before I came, there were exactly 32 being confined. There were, save for 2 that were still being actively pursued through the Brazilian underground and Russian tundra, respectively. That was about all of them in the world. At least we assumed that was all of them. Can't be sure about anything these days. Each holding cell was fortified to hell, specifically designed to counter and contain the respective void they were holding, if they managed to escape. There were 8 drones armed with Gatling guns, blades, grenades, and rockets waiting for them within a larger chamber. If they managed to break through that, then 20 guards in mechanized suits would have to step in. However, everybody understood the utility of that protocol. Those guards were getting slaughtered in seconds regardless of the void they went up against. Maybe minutes if they're really skilled. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure why any of us regular guards are stationed here at all. Bureaucracy, I guess. Who knows what the government's thinking? If the situation were to ever get too drastic, then there was really only one feasible countermeasure in place. A last resort, so to speak. The higher-ups would have to call in something known as Task Force Void Nova Hammer, or TFVNH for short. I've never seen them in action before, nor do I know much about them. Not that I really want to, though. If you ever find yourself witnessing them in person, then that must mean you're having a bad day. So why am I disclosing all of this uber-classified information that would either get me unalived or thrown in the deepest hole conceivable for the rest of my short life? Well, I'd estimate that there's about a 90% chance that I'm going to die by the end of today. And even if I do make it out of this fiasco, my life's never really going to be the same. So duck it. Here we go. My day started more or less normal. I was part of the unit guarding somebody named Jim Henninger. Well, that was his real name. Doesn't evoke a lot of fear, does it? That's why you had to call him something else, since he used to be some psycho surgeon or something. We've dubbed him the Surgeon. Creative stuff, I know. Standing at 5'7171, we were all required to memorize their physical stats. He doesn't look like much. However, if you ever find yourself in the same room with him, no matter how big and tough you are, you're getting dissected or something. The main danger surrounding him stems from the fact that he seems to be able to teleport on will. 1 second, you'll be staring at his dark, lifeless eyes. And after 1 blink, he'll disappear in a cloud of black haze, only to end up breathing right down your neck. For that reason, there's got to be at least 10 sets of eyes on his monitor at all times. There's no way around it. If he's not being watched, he will escape. No matter how many bullets you put through his head or blades plunge into his chest, the guy just won't croak. And once he gets a scalpel in his hands, oh boy. Of course, he's just 1 out of 32 and comparatively speaking on the tamer side. With that said, my guard shift ended without any incident routine stuff. Following that, I went on break in the lunchroom with my buddy Sandu. Our conversations were usually pretty dry, but at least I can talk to the guy. It's hard to get along with any of the other guards. They're all just weird in one way or another. Anyway, lunch was usually the most enjoyable part of a working day in the Chasm. What I didn't enjoy was the blaring effing alarm and deafening repeating automated voice blasting the word breach that went off right as I was about to take my chili out of the microwave. I could see Sandu's face drop at the disturbance. "You're effing kidding me," he mouthed. Now, I'd only ever experienced 1 minor breach up until that point, and it was from the surgeon. I guess none of us were paying any attention that day. He made it about 8 miles off the coast using a stolen boat, racking up a total body count of 145 in his wake. It took 3 full days to wrangle him back and 4 more weeks to fix all the damage he'd done to the infrastructure. That was all just 1 prisoner. If we were dealing with 3 or more, then our combined efforts as guards wouldn't have stood a semblance of a chance. There had only ever been one major breach in the chasm's history in which 8 voids had broken out nearly simultaneously. It was also apparently the only time that TFVNH had to step in. This was all around 12 years ago, long before I became a guard myself. The aftermath of that I don't have high enough clearance to know, but I'm willing to bet that it was nothing fun. We did have a breach procedure. It was a lengthy document outlining exactly what we were supposed to do and where we were supposed to go. I've read it before and it's effing garbage. It's essentially predicated on the idea that we're cannon fodder and that we're obligated to do whatever we can to contain the prisoners. If anybody followed the procedure, they'd die instantly. Well, what the hell are we supposed to do? Somebody asked. They only got shrugs in response. Except for Sawson, that is. I effing hated Sawson. The guy seems to believe that his life's an action movie and that he's the invincible main protagonist. Are y'all pussies or what? He screamed at the top of his lungs with a stupid grin plastered across his face. We never get any effing action. Let's effing go. Before anybody could stop him, he picked up his rifle and swung the door open like the giant effing dumb butt he is. Since the alarm was blaring, we could hardly hear anything that was going on outside in the corners. For that reason, we were all rather shocked upon seeing Morgie the corgi stand right outside. Imagine some guy walking around wearing a dirty, giant, creepy dog costume. Now imagine that this guy is 7,218 centimeters with a voice that's simultaneously deep, raspy, and childish. That's Morg, the corgi for you. I could see the bravado leaving Sawson's face the moment he laid eyes on the abomination in person. We'd only ever seen him through a screen before. Rough. I always hated it when people tried imitating dogs, but hearing it coming from Morg was a bit different and a lot worse. Before Sawson could even put his finger on the trigger, his head was mashed into a pulp. Morg began pouncing on other guards, effortlessly crushing limbs with his oversized paws. He'd switch between running around on his feet and crawling on all fours. The last thing I saw before running out of the break room was Morg forcing the remaining horrified agents to play fetch with him using a stray arm. But of course, it's not like I managed to escape anywhere better. The entire place was in an effing tizzy. The squad leaders were frantically attempting to scrap together some kind of suppression force. I couldn't understand why they were so delusional. Are we guards supposed to be bad butt duck? Yeah. Due to our field prowess, we were specifically selected from the existing pool of CIA agents and military personnel to be dropped into this godforsaken place. Put us up against a trafficking militia, terrorists, etc., and we'll smoke them. But what we can't deal with are things that aren't supposed to exist in the first place. We watch creature features and slasher flicks with the inherent understanding that we're watching fiction, a type of visual catharsis for our inherent fascination with the dark and grim. It's not supposed to be real, and we have no idea how to act once we find it standing right in front of our faces. Not even so-called elite agents. As I said, I'm not sure why they even bothered keeping guards in the chasm to begin with. These were the thoughts that ran through my head as I bolted through the hellish quarters. At one point, I stumbled upon a crowd of guards leering over some rails. Shockingly, they didn't seem concerned in the slightest. "What the hell are you guys looking at?" I asked them. A guard recognized as Fenton turned around. "This is going to be sick." He grinned, gesturing for me to look below. I didn't even know where I was going, so I didn't realize that I'd wandered into the level right above the weight room. It was a sprawling gem with an abundance of the best equipment obtainable. But there was one guard that used it the most, Branko Petrovic. A Serbian-American whose oversized frame hardly makes any effing sense. I swear when I first met the guy, he couldn't have been over 750. I'm not quite sure what kind of bizarre experiments they ran on him, but they sure as hell overdid.